There's a big talk now about absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, and I mean, a vehicle for fraud. Do you feel that way, or?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying just because they're absentee or just because they're mail-in it's going to be fraud, but if somebody wants to commit fraud, awfully easy to do it compared to walking in and you take your ballot from the person where you signed in, you go over and you write on it what it is, and you stick it in the machine, and the machine records it before anybody's touched it but you.
Well, here we are, same three guys. George Myers.
Morning.
Jim Spodek.
Morning.
And Dr. Ken Jorgen. We've been doing this for about 3 years. You want to just have a conversation for a change?
I think that's what we do, Doc. Yeah, that's actually what we do.
Oh, all right. What do you want to talk about? Why don't we talk about the Racine Unified thing? As long as you're here, you're real handy because you are deeply involved in it.
I saw a lot of it. I saw, and I...
Well, we're pressing forward. There's going to be an appeal filed, right?
It is filed.
It is filed already?
It is filed on the... there is. It was actually filed 24th of July, and that was the appeal on the judge's order that, matter of fact, I think his statement was, let me get it here, just so we got it. It's the court finds that a full, fair, transparent, and accurate recount occurred. So that was his decision on the appeal of the referendum on the recount.
Well, from everything that we've talked about, I don't think that's true.
No.
No. As a matter of fact, on our recount, we come out after we look at the way things were drawn and changed and put in and taken out. Actually won by 13 votes.
Well, the ballots should show that, right?
Well, yeah, which brings up the point. Yeah, the ballot should show up, but we're not allowed to see the ballot. So the appeal is actually, it's funny, it's shifting, although we actually won the election by 13 votes. It shifted emphasis, Jim, and you're the closest one. You've dealt more with the lawyer, and it's shifted. The emphasis is shifted to our rights to review ballots.
Right. In your
that's a dangerous
complaint,
shift.
Yeah, we allege the recount in 12 wards were inaccurately counted, and there were more no votes than yes votes, and we asked to examine those wards. So you're asking. So now you're saying, listen. We've got enough evidence that we feel that we should be able to look at these ballots now to verify the fact that this recount may have had some discrepancies in it. Yeah, and there was an awful lot of discrepancies.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
No, just so people think, well, wait a minute, if we haven't seen the ballots, how do we think we won by 13 votes? Well, because the tabulators and the canvassers, the people who are in charge of it, as they're counting things, they're making notes and worksheets of how many votes got taken out and how many got put in and how many went from this pile to that pile and that type of stuff. So all the notes is all we were allowed to look at. The notes say, if we take those notes and look at the summary, the notes say we won by 13 votes. It's just that when they somehow did what they did, they just horribly miscounted, or they were transferring ballots around or some darn thing. It was either fraudulent or extremely stupid, one of the two. And so, according to the notes that were taken and what they did and what they counted, we won by 13 votes. But we never really got to look at the real evidence. In other words, somebody shot somebody with something. We never got to look at the bullet to make sure that it did come from that gun. We
couldn't even see the dead body.
No, we didn't get to investigate anything. There was a noise, and we came in and saw a dead body there, and a person sitting there with a smoking gun. But we never got to look any further than that. See, so it's gotten down to, I think the way you put it, Jim, or you put it, was that once, if this is held up the way it is, then there is no chance to challenge a recount.
Correct.
Because you can't look at the ballots.
Correct.
You can't look at the ballots.
When the judge ruled on this, did he not state that the appellates, meaning you and the other persons, weren't specific enough.
Yeah.
Now that was his argument, that you weren't specific enough.
Didn't give the who,
I want to
what,
get
when,
into
where,
that a
and
little
how.
bit.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Well, the who, what, when, where, and how. I actually finally wrote it up. Jim had gotten names of the tabulators at the tables and where they were and when they were there, and so I concocted it, or what do you want? I wrote it up. I knew who it was, and I know what day it was. So I said, Jim and Fred on this day did take a ballot from the no column and put it over into the yes pile, and then counted it wrong that way, and did that fraudulently or by mistakenly. So I did put a who, what, when,
Right.
where,
And that's what the judge wanted. But really, what it came down to, he made it so almost impossible to say we know every aspect of how those ballots were counted and who counted them and what time they counted them and why they did what they did. I mean, it was so absolutely almost bizarre to that degree. This was, in the complaint, 12 wards. There were ballots that were, by their own notes, said, there were so many yes, so many no, but in the final count, it came up different than what it was.
Yeah.
So that was, and it was spelled out in every ward that wanted to be examined. Correct.
Right. Now, yeah, we never actually put in what I just described. We never put in those names and that type of stuff. But the showing that a ballot had been taken from this file, or somehow put into this pile because there were so many yes votes and so many no votes, and there was no way you could count it the way they counted it. So essentially, we did have a who, what, when, where, and how, but it wasn't quite as specific as that. But the thing was that was the evidence that we had, and it was there, and all we wanted to look at was 12 of these
Polling places,
voting places. Yeah, is what they basically were. They were sort of in Racine. It got down to wards, which was a part of a voting place. It wasn't even the whole, because a lot of the voting places had 2 or 3 wards were voting there, and all we would want to look in Racine is one ward, and then the way it was relayed in the paper was that we wanted to do a total recount all over again, which was not the truth. I mean, there were like 40 or 50 voting places. The 36 wards in Racine and another 18 voting things in the suburbs. So it was like 50, and we wanted to look at 12 of them. And it could have been very fast because we knew exactly what we wanted to look at. But they wouldn't let
the
people
point
look
being
at it.
that you raised is if you're not allowed to look at the ballots, then you can't verify the recount. And if you're objecting to the initial count, you should be able to see if the recount is accurate. And if you can't look at the ballots, you have no way of knowing.
That's right.
And all the notes that you have and all the observations you made is that there were some inaccuracies.
That's right.
So all you want to do is look at the ballots and confirm whether or not they're there, and the judge said no.
Right, and what that gets down to, and I like the way our attorney has said, is said they could say anything they want to do about the recount. They could admit they moved it differently, but as long as they said they follow procedure, we don't get to look at the ballots, and therefore it stands whatever they said about it.
Why would the judge not just say, hey, listen, these appellates should have an opportunity to look at the ballots. It'll clear things up. And if they're wrong, I mean, you'll accept the fact that the referendum passed.
I quite frankly think it's money and power, momentum. In other words, you have all this money coming in, $400,000 just from Yes for Our Children, in
that was campaign funds.
That was campaign funds, It's $1 billion. You've got all these employees. You've got this massive movement this way. And it's easier to jump onto that train and ride that one, even though it's going into oblivion. It's easier to jump on that train and ride that one than over here with us individuals over here, just a couple of us over. Hey, hold on a second. We think it's going down the wrong track. And you go, who the heck is that? It's just. I think it's just purely. It's just more comfortable. It's always more comfortable to jump into bed with power, and ride with that because you're not going to get beat up. It's when you jump out there by yourself. And stand, you're like that little Chinese guy in front of the tank. It's like that.
With his lunch sack, his book bag or whatever it was.
Come on and get me. So it's and I really think that's what it was. It was just easier for the judges to go that way.
Judge Piantek basically punted, saying, "Here, appeals court, here, take it."
Well, we know to a large degree that from one of the things that occurred at the hearing, and that was with regards to one of our attorneys. His mother had died from the COVID, and so he needed a couple of days to extend it on it. And that would have been the very last thing that happened. All the documents were in there, and the last one came in. Oh, I need an extra couple days. That'd been right on top. The judge signed it. Well, when it came to the hearing, he ridiculed our attorney for being late. He did that twice.
Yeah.
And finally, our attorney spoke up and said, "Your Honor, I'd put in a motion that my mother had died from the COVID, and I needed a couple extra days." And the judge, oops,
Well, he had to approve it.
He had approved it. He would have signed it. The point was, it would have been the last thing in there. It would have been right on top, and he didn't even see that. So he obviously had not read the case. From the get-go, it was just going to be easier for him to just jump on board with Unified, jump on board with all these school teachers and all this power and the mayor and all the everybody else that's in line with this, rather than.
Well, I got a question for you. Now, when it goes to the appeals court, is the appellate court going to actually look at any of the ballots?
No, they won't be looking at the ballot. I don't even think they're going to look at our case because you're right in the family there. The chief judge there is Lisa Neubauer, who's tied in with Greta Neubauer, who was very interested in the outcome of the Corey Mason and the family. She was there on the Monday night when they first did the count. Mm-hmm. And then she was there a lot during the recount. During that whole week, she was there almost every day. So she was very tied in with Unified, very interested in the outcome. So her mother is going to be the person that's going to be in charge of reviewing the appeal. It's part of the big train that's going down the track.
It's got implications for the whole state. Here's
the thing. I want to go into the little connection with Mayor Mason. Before we get into the state level, let's talk about Mayor Mason and the Yes for Kids, because we pulled up a finance report on Yes for Kids, and Rebecca Mason was paid in-kind donations of over $18,000 for her legal work for Yes for Kids, which was the political arm of Racine Unified, which spent in excess of $400,000 on this campaign. All those flyers you got, well, that was a lot of money, and a lot of donations brought in with that. But one of the other things was the mayor's campaign or communication director, Shannon Powell. His wife was the director of the Yes for Campaign committee. Yes for Kids. Yeah. Yes for Kids. And
so there you go. Yeah.
So this whole thing was run really out of the mayor's office and all connected. And so when you have the connections at the appellate level, and then you have connections at the local mayoral level, and
the mayor's office right there, right in his office.
I mean, this is a very, very difficult appeal to get through the appellate court. I mean, I assume that's what you're thinking, George?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I felt that there was the appellate court was going to get a yawn. That's all we're going to get. And we were just going to have to automatically assume that we're going to get a yawn in the appellate court, and we're going to have to take it up to the Supreme Court, which gets even more difficult, a lot of expense. The shift in the emphasis on the import of what the judge's decision, of denying any voter's ability to review ballots, takes it away from this count, which was our impetus, because we felt we'd won the election. So by shifting it over to a broader type of topic, maybe we can force the judge at the appellate, Lisa Neubauer, in other words, to look at it.
And the reason they would look at it is because the state of Wisconsin would be under, say this goes to the appellate court, and say they side with Judge Piantek. That would mean that any recount in the state of Wisconsin after that, and I know the attorneys on this would have that published.
That's a key. That's a key thing. What you just said there, getting it published. See, if it's just a decision and it gets put in the book file someplace, doesn't affect anybody. But when our attorney asks for it to get published, which he thinks he can get it done, now it becomes case, this case law you hear about for the whole state. Now it's no longer just Racine Unified School District down here in Racine, Mount Pleasant, and Caledonia. Now it's the whole state that's affected by this,
Right.
and he thinks that's going to drive Lisa Neubauer into looking at it.
Well, they're going to, because now you're going to say to the voters in the state of Wisconsin that if you have a recount and you could claim anything, and then once it's certified by the same people that more than likely petitioned for the referendum, they could say, you don't have, no citizen, no voter has a chance to go back and say, hey, that recount was done incorrectly or fraudulent. And they could actually admit to it. But once it would be certified, there would be no recourse to go back and ask for, like what you're asking for, is to, hey, I want to look at somebody's ballots.
Look at the ballots.
So this has state implications. It could be, the whole state could be under this perceived no chance to look at any of the ballots on a recount.
Yeah.
Or look at any, or actually question anything on a recount. So basically a recount would be rock solid, and there would be no avenue for voters or citizens groups to go in and say, hey, listen, I think there was a problem with that recount. We want to go back and have the opportunity to look at those ballots and to verify what we think happened.
And by the way, that will be all elections. At that very same election, there was a aldermanic challenge because Henry Perez had only won by 3 votes. All right, and all the ballots weren't looked at there, but they were just counted. We didn't look at the ballots, but they went through the whole process, except on a much smaller basis, for that ballot. Well, for that election. So the thing is that this decision would affect even those little aldermanic things, where if somebody said, "Wait a second, I want to look at those. I want to look at those ballots," even though with Henry's there were maybe 200 or 300 of them.
Yeah.
You would not be able to look at the ballots. You would not be able to inspect anything.
Well, we were talking earlier, and you brought up a good point that when a referendum appears on a ballot, it's somebody is advocating for something. They want the citizens to vote in favor of some particular thing. In this case, it was the Racine Unified School District was asking the voters to support a new budget which is going to run into like $1 billion over 30 years. Now, when that became challenged, because it was their referendum, they are the people who do all the recounting. They manage the whole recount procedure.
That's the way the law is read. That's right.
And
whoever held the election that holds the recount.
But now you're hoping that that can be changed.
That should be changed.
Yeah.
It works fine when you've got a political partisan, and not partisan necessarily, but a political office involved, because it's generally a city clerk or a county clerk that's holding the election. And the people there may favor one of the candidates to the other. But it's not like they're part of the campaign staff of one of the person that was running for the office. They're at least separate from it. In a referendum like Racine Unified, it was school teachers, and the canvassers were Racine Unified School District staff. So it's like the people that were in charge of campaigning in the election were also holding the recount. So it's terribly partisan, and when we were there watching it, you're an outsider the whole time. Everybody else is buddy, but you're out there trying to find out what was that over there, that type of thing, and you're really shunned. So I think when you get into any of the referendums, you need to bring a separate body to come in and hold the recount. It can't be the people that held the election, because they are going to have a strong interest in the outcome of that election. And no telling what they're going to be doing with those ballots.
One other question. The absentee ballots, there's a big talk now about absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, and, a vehicle for fraud. Do you feel that way? Or?
Well, absolutely. I'm not saying just because they're absentee or just because they're mail-in it's going to be fraud, but if somebody wants to commit fraud, awfully easy to do it compared to walking in and you take your ballot from the person where you signed in, and you go over and you write on it what it is, and you stick it in the machine, and the machine records it before anybody's touched it but you. That is pretty rough to do something with that. You'd have to get into the programming and all that type of stuff to do something like that. But with this, heck, your ballot gets opened up, they look at the envelope. You'd be surprised how many ballots didn't get counted because they weren't
because
properly
it's
signed.
It's required that the person voting signs it.
Has to
and then
sign
a
it,
witness
has to be
signs
witnessed it,
that's
has to
the
be postmarked
person that did it.
right, and you've
Yeah.
got these postmarks you could hardly read.
Well, all right, what about this? What about this early voting where I see the tents set up and they drive up and they do their ballot and they hand it to the individual there?
It's the same thing. The point is when you don't control, when somebody else controls that ballot, it goes between you and somebody else before it gets to that counting machine, there's chance for fraud. Even in that recounting, I'm not accusing anybody of doing this, but it certainly would have been possible when those tabulators were there. That was all done in number 2 pencil, according to the instructions on the thing.
Yeah.
So too easy, just erase that thing off the no column and fill it in over the red.
what are the
No,
things
Put it
that-
in the other stack.
Is there any idea when the appellate court is going to look at this? Probably not, right? I mean, it usually takes like months.
Could take months, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You haven't
I
heard anything
haven't
yet?
gotten any.
No.
Yeah, if it's treated as cavalierly as it was at the court level, and like some of these other things where we're saying where things get decided in 4 hours after it arrives there,
right.
like some of these cases, it might move fast, but otherwise it takes.
I mean,
a while.
has our system turned into this political? All these courts seem to be so political now, and this connections of we have to vote for someone who's liberal or somebody who's conservative. I mean, what happened to just the rule of law?
I think what you said is exactly true. It's just gotten very political. Even
Got
up the
perverted.
judges. I mean, the other two branches of government, the legislative and the executive branch, have been political for a long time.
I mean, why is it that a voter can't, a voters group such as yourself or a petitioner such as yourself say, hey, listen, we've got a problem here. Here we spell it out exactly what we want to look at. And no, I can't look at that. I mean, doesn't that seem almost to the point of non-democratic?
Very much so,
It's
yeah.
a shame, right? When Judge Fredrickson came out and made that ruling on the order that Dottie Bauer-Sox had put out, for the confinement and all that type of stuff, and ruled that it was broad and
Unenforceable.
vague
Yeah.
and unconstitutional, that was rare. And you saw how quickly it got shot down. All right, and it's because he was that guy out here saying, "Hey, wait a minute, there's something wrong here.
Right.
That
He was
train
on the
is-
train tracks.
Yeah, that's going down. Or that's going wrong. It's going the wrong way. That's not the way. That's not." And it was very clear what he said. It was just so refreshing. But boy, took that, and that was one of those where it got decided in less than a day
Yeah.
up there at the Pello.
5 hours or something
No,
like that.
it's a real
Well, you
shame
guys-
what's happened.
You guys ready to close out on this topic?
Yeah, I don't want to because I think there's a lot here, and I
Yeah,
think the
but-
state of Wisconsin. I do want to say one thing. I know that Hot Government is asking for some donations, so if you get a chance, go to Hot Government site, hotgovernment.com, and make a donation. Because I'll be honest with you, I know George, and some of these other guys have spent a lot of their own personal money, and I'd like to see.
And 10, 20 bucks.
Yeah.
There were 15,000 people voted. If everybody one of those gave $10, we'd have 5 times as much as we needed. 10 times as
Don't
much.
say
as we
that
needed.
because that number keeps moving.
But I'm just
I can
saying.
talk to the attorney, the number goes up.
Yeah, but I'm just
noticed that.
saying.
That's
you know,
amazing.
If you just go in and give 10, 20 bucks, and,
Yeah.
and that'd be good. You don't have to do it.
500, a couple big ones.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, we take those.
Good. Okay, let's move on to the mask mandate. Boy, the Lone Ranger and Zorro had no idea what they were up against, huh? If they came by this time of civilization.
You walk in, you look around, you say everybody's got a mask on.
Well, we proposed that we were going to do a study last week because Kenosha was pretty wide open and Racine was pretty shut down. We thought this is a perfect opportunity to compare the value of a tight shutdown and a little bit looser restrictions. And Governor Evers, we suspect he was watching our show.
Yeah.
And he wanted to torpedo our study. He says, no, everybody in the state's going to have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
The heck with you guys down in Racine. So, well, we do have a little bit of the statistics from last week compared to this week. In Kenosha County, they've had 2 additional deaths since last week and 215 new cases of corona in Racine. There's 256 new cases and 8 more deaths.
And by the way, this is pre-order. That order doesn't take place until today.
Yeah.
I think it was August 3rd. I mean, if not, it was August 1st.
Right.
But in other words, this
But Racine
result is prior to that. So this.
Racine had already shut down as of a week ago.
No, they were already under a mandate to have a mask
Right.
and to have.
Right. But Kenosha hadn't been shut down. Kenosha is still wide open. So far, Kenosha's still doing
Hanging
fine.
in there. Yeah, they're doing good. They're actually doing better.
Out there, actually doing better out there talking and stuff. The with regards to this masking, I would just like to bring out one thing about Sheriff Schmeling, Racine County Sheriff Schmeling. He is quoted in the newspaper, or reported in the newspaper. His department will not enforce the order, just as he said he would not enforce a safe at home order preceding it being before it was overturned. And I would just like to maybe speak for him, because he did this prior, a couple of years ago. He did something along the same lines. It sounds like it might be disorderly for the sheriff to do that. The governor has just ordered, and he says, I'm not enforcing it. Well, he's perfectly within his authority and right as a sheriff to do it. Remember, he reports directly to the voter. And when he takes that oath of office, his oath of office is to the Constitution. He's sworn to uphold the Constitution. He does not swear to uphold the orders of the governor of the state. So when he steps out like that and says that, and if he's doing it for constitutional reasons, he's totally within his rights as the county sheriff to do that, to say that's an unconstitutional order, I do not feel it's right, and I am not going to enforce it. There's nothing wildcat about that at all.
From a logistics standpoint, I can understand. I mean, most law enforcement, you see them parked once in a while, but basically these guys are pretty busy during the day.
That's right.
And if they start getting a bunch of phone calls on people not wearing masks, and it could be like, I don't like you today, so I call up and hey.
Yeah, my neighbor's out there watering
not wearing a
lawn,
mask,
doesn't have a mask on.
So there's an opportunity for almost a vigilante revenge kind of a thing going on in the community. So I understand.
I could understand that from the practical side.
Just on that level,
on a practical level, but on a constitutional legal level, I'm saying even if he's got all the time in the world to do it, he has the total authority. This is not a wildcat decision, something that's way out of bounds. Sheriff is totally within his authority to do that. Unlike the police chief, who does not respond directly to the voters and is under the authority of a commission, who's under the kind of the quasi-authority of a mayor, he doesn't have quite that same power. So for him to step out like that would be a little bit of wildcatting. You see the difference there? That's all I want to bring out with regards to this. I don't mean any other thing by it other than to say that for him to do that as a sheriff, as an elected officer who reports directly to the people, he's totally within his authority to do that legally.
One of the Grant County sheriff I thought was kind of comical. He said, "Don't call us. Just don't call us. Don't call." I kind of laughed.
We don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. Don't call us.
There was one other very interesting thing. This comes from a couple days ago. Counties, cities face difficult mask decisions. And I thought this was very amusing. Without a uniform mask law, Wisconsin cities and counties are left to decide on their own, good God, what to do. I thought, wait a minute. You mean there's a city of Racine, which has different circumstances than even the city of Milwaukee, which is much bigger, compared to some little city way up there in the middle of Wisconsin, northwest Wisconsin. They should be able to and should want to make different decisions and not worry about what we're seeing in Milwaukee and these other cities are doing. But now I don't know if the cities actually feel that way or it was just Scott Bauer of Associated Press saying that, but this idea that we need a uniform mask law for Wisconsin cities, otherwise they're lost. What are we going to do? We have to figure out on our own what to do.
Well, one thing I would request, and it's from you guys, when you go into a store or a private business, you're on private property, the employees there are trying to comply with what they believe they should be complying with, so don't give them a hard time. I mean, I've seen some videos where people are just cussing these people out, and
Yeah, and
you're
that's
violating my rights, blah, blah, blah. You're on private property. If you don't want to
And if you don't,
don't go there. Go
if you don't
somewhere
want to
else.
respect the employees, at least respect to the owner, because the owner is facing the possibility of have somebody come over and close his doors and shut his business down if he
You're
doesn't
inviting them
enforce
to not respect the employees?
No, I'm just saying,
No, I
not only the
agree, yeah,
employees,
yeah.
but also to think of the owner who could really lose a lot
Yeah.
by allowing that
I mean,
to get
this
done,
whole
and his
thing to
employees
me
are helping him out.
is there's something radically wrong with this whole scenario of
Oh,
this
yeah,
COVID,
well,
this
yeah.
mask, all of it. It's completely off the rails, and we're eventually going to find out what.
Well,
all
that's
this
what our
is.
test is about.
But
Kenosha versus Racine.
we'll leave it at that. But
Yeah,
anyway.
but just be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all we got to say today. So thank you for being here, and come back and see us next week.